an example I'm going to give you. You've lost your keys and you're looking under a lone, lonely intersections street lamp out in the middle of nowhere. They're not dirt roads, but it's a lonely area out in the outskirts. And you're under there and someone pulls over. Hey, can I help you? Oh, I've lost my keys. Okay, well, I'll help you find them. Okay. About a half hour later, where were you standing exactly the last time you saw them? Oh, a mile away, but it's dark over there and I can search here under the light. Politicians ignoring what's really going on because they know they can do this, even if it's got not a damn thing to do with it. Ghost guns, 3D printers, homemade guns, a couple of pieces of pipe you keep handy. Let's call the whole thing off. How many actual shootings have happened from quote-unquote ghost guns or 3D printed guns? They're not the same thing. I can make a gun here, serialize it, and register it. It's not a ghost gun, but it's a homemade gun. I can do the same thing with a 3D printed one and even automatically include the serial number if I want. In fact, some companies are doing that because they make, the manufacturers, and they make the guns by 3D printing them in metal because it's too complicated to machine them first. So they do all the hard work by 3D printing it, which takes forever, and then milling them because they're an extremely exotic type of design. But how many ghost guns are involved in actual shootings of any kind? Ghost guns made from an unfinished receiver that was milled out. This is the word that was used for ghost gun. This is the meaning for it a while ago. Not 3D printed. This is actually a billet from a factory that makes an AR-15 lower or a Glock lower. But it's unfinished. The majority of it has to be drilled out so that you can fire it. Even if it can fire a single shot, that's milled enough. So this involves removing parts from the top using a milling tool or a drill bit or whatever. 2 instances. Not 2 instances this year. 2 instances of a gun that was an unfinished receiver being used in a murder that was confirmable. Now, the reason I'm saying confirmable is the police department dead-ass refused to tell people what they meant by ghost gun. There's hundreds of cases. Oh, yeah, ghost guns were involved. That means a ghost gun was found in the trailer house across the street that's been empty for a year. Or it's a gun that had the numbers filed off and they weren't able to retrieve it, so it's called a ghost gun. Or it never had the frickin' serial numbers in the first place because it's a 1905 break-action shotgun that wasn't involved in the shooting. Yeah, people lie about this, all right? But let's do the actual confirmable. 2. Really, 2? Yeah, 2. Unfinished receivers that were made into a functioning gun by somebody for their usage. What about people making hundreds of them? That's called a gun-making factory. People doing it without licensing are thrown in jail all the time. Those guns end up on the street? Yeah, but I'm including those. Here we go. Guns made at home using homemade receivers, like me getting a couple of hunks of pipe to make a shotgun. Again, there are 2, not instances, 2 guns. 1 instance. This is making it the old-fashioned way, sheet metal or plates. Ghost guns made using a 3D printed receiver, an actual thing that people are wanting to legislate. This has been around for a while. People figured out a long time ago you can make certain guns, most of the gun out of plastic, for other reasons. Okay, Glock. But seriously. And then that's a starting point, but you mill the rest and you make a gun. And this has been successfully done years and years ago. It's been a while. 0. 3D printed by the user guns. Companies using a 3D printer to make a Glock, including Glock, yeah, they exist. 0 as well, because nobody's used that one for some reason for murdering anybody. Quinkadinkly. Normal guns made at home using traceable finished receivers and just altered by adding parts to it, like AR-15s and stuff. Be using repair parts, maintenance kits, replacement parts kits, overhaul kits that are not considered firearms. You just buy a gun which is supposed to be traceable. Not a ghost gun, but they're calling it a ghost gun because you bought a parts kit. Yeah, that actually is something done. I'm not even qualifying the number, but apparently hundreds of murders are retroactively Ghost gun kit driven. Because someone needs a statistic, because we have 4 ghost guns. 4. Where the company... Okay, there was a murder-suicide. Oh, he used a ghost gun. Can we see what it looked like? No. Was it 3D printed, or was it just a gun that someone filed the serial number off of, which has been around since forever? We're not going to let you know that. Then a reporter got a photo of it. It's an ordinary pistol that someone filed the frickin' numbers off of, and when they checked out the style, the thing was made in the 1960s. It was just a gun someone bought off the street, someone filed the numbers off of. That's been done for forever. Ever since serial numbers have been traditional and even required, traditionally, serial numbers were used just to keep track of inventory. And then finally, ghost guns. Okay, we found thousands of ghost guns in this basement. And then the case was thrown out. Well, why would they do that? Because it was a plumbing shop. They used the ghost gun Spectre to get a fucking search warrant. Didn't find anything other than one gun that had no serial number on it, that the guy actually registered because he had a serial number emblazoned on the wooden body of it. It's an old-ass gun. In the old days, you didn't have to put it on the receiver. You could just put it on the wooden furniture. The gun hadn't changed since 1920. And yes, people being accused of it because they had aluminum blocks. I'm not kidding. A guy was arrested for having potential ghost guns, several thousand of them, because he ran a company that made aluminum. He took an order for somebody wanting aluminum blocks this big, cut so that they could mill them into guns, I guess, right? That's not a ghost gun. That's a guy fulfilling an order for aluminum blanks to make things. By the way, the company that was making them into ghost guns was making pellet guns. They're airsoft. But yeah, the ATF is infallible as fuck. All imported or manufactured firearms must have a serial number. Not homemade guns, because you're not manufacturing, you're making. There's a designation that way. If you're making them to sell them instead of making a gun so you can have a gun, you're in the business of making guns. Firearm deaths in 2019. Not suicides, not murders, but undeterminate, because someone died but they don't know if they committed suicide or if they were shot, because CSI Miami isn't real. 5,000 cases. How many suicides? 23,000. How many deaths total? 40. How many were murder victims? About 10,000. So the suicide rate's double the murder rate. Again, I can find my keys if they ever fell over here under the lamppost, but I'm not going to go look where I can't get anything done. So I'm not going to pay attention to suicides. Deaths by firearms include unknown. But anyway, 10,000 murder victims. Okay. Well, all of them have to be rifles, because everyone talks up 3D printed ghost gun, AR-15, fully automatics. By the way, in case you're curious, number of murders committed with fully automatic weapons. I found 3 incidents. 3. Not per year, 3 total. And I can't confirm that because, again, if you ask a law enforcement official to be extremely specific and not be vague or ambiguous about anything, and they won't do it, that means they're lying, doesn't it? But I found there's probably a dozen total over the last 10 years. At least one a year. Somebody gets hold of a machine gun and murders someone, right? Number of murder victims, 10,000. Handguns, 62% of the time. Did you know that most handguns are semi-automatic, auto-loading? They're auto-reloading guns. They're either to where you have to pull the trigger really hard, a double action only, bang, and then everyone after that is just releasing the hammer because that impact drives it. Or they're like a revolver where your mechanical energy is going into firing them. The majority of handguns are of the variety of action that is treated as the cutoff point in California to call something an assault weapon, except handguns. You know how you make a handgun that they don't consider an assault weapon into an assault weapon? Put a really long barrel on it and put a buttstock on it. Now it's an assault weapon. And yes, there are a specific variety of firearm that are treated as handguns and you're allowed to put a buttstock on. As soon as you put a buttstock and a longer barrel on it, now it's an assault weapon. Because of the action. Not because of the barrel of the buttstock, but because it does the same thing the fucking thing did when it was a pistol. Handguns, 62% of the murder victims. Let's ignore handguns. What about unidentified firearm? That's because it's exotic or weird or 3D. No, it's just because they couldn't identify it because they had a victim and a bullet wound, so they knew it was a bullet, but they couldn't identify what it came out of. Maybe because it had no rifling, or the rifling was damaged because 90% of the bullets you fire at a person, if you're trying to actually shoot them, are hollow points, and if they hit at a high enough force, they're going to rip themselves to pieces to where identifying maybe even the caliber is difficult, depending on where they're hit. Also, I should include people firing multiple guns and couldn't figure out what gun it was because all the bullets also fractured, but it's a mess of pieces. I also should include people, dead-ass doing this, loading a shotgun with range scrap, so you know for a fact it was a shotgun. That'll be listed. But no calibers can be used, and the ballistics are fucked. Unidentified firearms, 32%. 62% were handguns. Now, this also includes them overlapping because a person could have been shot multiple times, and they decided, even though the person was only wounded in the foot with one gun or type, that the one the coup de grace isn't the one they count. They count every one of them to jack up statistics. So let's watch them do so. Out of the 1% or whatever left over of murder victims in 2019, almost 3.5% were rifles. 1.9% were shotguns, and other is less than 0.5%. That means there was people firing multiple types of things. Usually it's a pistol and a rifle, or pistol and a shotgun. But they only found shotguns in 2% or 3.5%, depending on which one you're looking at, in 2019, involved in a murder. Now, I want to point out something about the suicides. The likelihood of you buying a handgun and using it in self-defense is very low. It's 33%. The likelihood of you shooting yourself with it is 60%. Your likelihood of having a gun in the house being more deadly to you is twice as high as not having the gun and being a victim of being shot. The suicide prevention hotline number will be the first thing in the video's description. 2017, was it any different? 64% handgun, 28% unidentified firearm, rifle 3.7%, shotguns 2.4%, other firearm 1.7%. What about the likelihood in general getting shot? Let's talk about our risk factor. Let's be bold and beautiful about it. Out of 14,000 homicides involving a gun, this isn't actually being shot. There was a gun in the room. Okay, fine. I'm trying to make the number big here. Out of 325 million people in 2017, in the before time, that means you had a 4.5 people per 100,000 were shot. Or that means that you, and it's basically the same numbers, have a 1 in 22,000 to 1 in 23,000 chance of being shot. Where did these happen in? Here we go. Worst cities. Out of 100,000 people, out of that, 4.4%, St. Louis, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, New Orleans, Louisiana, Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, Las Vegas, Nevada, Kansas City, Missouri, Memphis, Tennessee, Newark, New Jersey, Chicago, Illinois, Cincinnati, Ohio, Philadelphia, PA, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky, Oakland, California, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia. In that order. You're safer in Atlanta, Georgia, or Washington, D.C. than St. Louis, Missouri, or Baltimore, Maryland. And that is also, if you're not aware of it, 2017. That includes Las Vegas only really showing up that high because of a mass shooting. Yes, mass shootings involving rifles, no matter whether they're normal, altered, made full auto, fake auto, 3D printed, or milled out of a chunk of wood. Those get the newspaper stories. The suicide rate, that's obviously the biggest problem, is ignored. And the handguns that are the biggest problem that used to be acknowledged aren't. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.